Hello, my name is Daniel. Thank you for being here with me today. If you enjoy real, heartbreaking cheating stories from Reddit, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me. This is a story that's been haunting me ever since I read it. It's not just the betrayal, it's the way the pain lingers even when the truth turns out to be something else. This comes from a woman named Heather, 35, who lives in Asheville, North Carolina. She's been married to her husband, Logan, 33, for 2 years. Together they have 2 children, a 5-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. On the outside, everything seemed normal, stable even. But what started as an ordinary breakfast Sunday turned into something that fractured the very foundation of their marriage. Heather had just started clearing the dishes when Logan left for the gym. Before leaving, he'd made a big show of his iPad, placing it on the kitchen counter, setting it near the sink, leaving it conveniently close to wherever she happened to be. At the time, she didn't think much of it. Now, she can't stop replaying the way he drew her attention to it. While she loaded the dishwasher, the iPad buzzed with a message. She glanced over and froze. A photo of a naked woman's torso filled the screen with a message that read, "You missed this?" The name on the number was someone named Elise. She couldn't breathe. Her legs gave out beneath her. The horror of betrayal wrapped around her chest so tightly she bolted to the bathroom and vomited. After wiping tears from her face, she opened the message thread, even though every part of her told her not to. There, in black and white, was a week-long conversation between Logan and Elise, the kind of intimacy no wife should ever have to witness. When Logan returned from the gym, Heather didn't scream. She didn't throw the iPad. She simply handed it to him and asked if he could watch the kids while she went for a walk. He agreed without a word. She wandered the streets for 3 hours, the cold air doing nothing to numb the ache in her chest. He texted her while she was out, asking if she was okay. She said she just needed space, but she wasn't okay. She couldn't remember ever crying like that in her life. When she finally came back home, her voice was steady but hollow. She told Logan she knew about the affair, that they couldn't stay married. She said they needed to start figuring out how to minimize the damage to their kids. Since his parents lived nearby, she suggested he stay with them so the children could remain in their home for now. That's when he snapped. "Is that really all your reaction? Are you effing serious right now?" he shouted. Heather stood stunned, confused. What did he expect from her? She told him she was too exhausted to fight and needed rest, but he wouldn't let it go. He started yelling about how cold and unfeeling she was, how she hadn't reacted the way he imagined. Then he shoved the iPad into her hands and barked, "Call Elise!" She refused, heart pounding, and ran to the bedroom. But he followed her. "Call the number," he demanded again. So she did. On the other end of the line, a man burst into laughter. It was Logan's friend. "Damn, you should have seen your face," he chuckled. "It was just a joke." It took her a few seconds to comprehend. Just a joke. She dropped the phone and cried harder than before. It wasn't an affair. It wasn't Elise. It was a setup, a prank, a twisted, manipulative test of her love. But Logan wasn't remorseful. He was furious. Furious that Heather hadn't responded with more passion, that she didn't scream, accuse, fight. He told her he was disappointed by how easily she believed he'd cheat, that she was too cold, too calm, too quick to move on. Now, a month later, he's still distant, and cold. Heather tried explaining that she hadn't reacted out of indifference. It was shock. She had never expected something so cruel from him. She apologized, not because she was in the wrong, but because she knew he felt hurt by what he perceived as apathy. She told him she still loved him, that even believing it was true for just a few hours broke something deep inside her. that she was trying to protect their kids from more damage, trying to stay grounded, because if she let herself fall apart, there'd be nothing left. But Logan won't listen. He says her reaction wasn't normal, that something is wrong with her for not breaking down more violently. And now he won't talk. He just walks around like a ghost in their home, while Heather is left wondering if love is supposed to survive a test like this. Heather never expected that sharing her story would leave her feeling even more isolated. She had hoped that by being honest, completely honest, someone might offer a perspective that could help her find her way through the fog. But instead, the comments poured in, dividing sharply between empathy and judgment. Some accused her of being weak, of lacking self-respect, of defending a man who played with her heart like it was some twisted joke. But Heather wasn't defending him. She was telling the truth, not the version shaped by hurt or anger, but the truth as she knew it. Logan had never acted like this before. In all the years she'd known him, there hadn't been a single red flag like this. That's why the prank hit her so hard, why she vomited, why she shook, why she couldn't breathe. It wasn't because she expected it from him. It was because it was unthinkable. And when it happened, her whole world tilted off its axis. People told her she was brainwashed, that she must be manipulated to not be running for the door. But the truth was, the moment Heather thought Logan had cheated, her first instinct wasn't to beg or cling, it was to let go. She calmly asked how they would handle the separation. She put her children's needs above her own grief. That wasn't weakness. That was strength. She wasn't proud of apologizing, but she did it anyway, not because she believed she was wrong, but because she saw how hurt Logan was by her lack of a dramatic reaction. She tried to explain the shock, the freezing up, the numbness that overcame her instead of rage, but none of that mattered to him. He just saw someone who didn't fight for him, and that broke something between them. What broke Heather was realizing he had designed the whole thing. He and a friend decided it would be funny to fake an affair and watch her unravel. And then when she did, just not the way he wanted, he turned on her again. It wasn't just betrayal, it was cruelty. Online, some people saw that. They told her what she already feared but couldn't name. This wasn't a prank, it was emotional abuse. They said he was testing her love in the most twisted way imaginable, and when she didn't pass his invisible, impossible test, he punished her for it. Others reminded her that trauma doesn't always look like screaming and throwing things. Sometimes it looks like walking for 3 hours while your world falls apart in silence. The worst part? Heather started to believe she was the problem, that maybe she was too detached. Maybe she should have yelled, cried louder, done something more than quietly tell him it was over. But deep down she knew. She had reacted the way she needed to, for her kids, for herself, for the fragile structure of her family that she thought had just crumbled. Still, the judgment lingered. Strangers who knew nothing about her life tossed labels like doormat and fool. Even as she thanked those who supported her, she felt a dull ache in her chest knowing how many others misunderstood her. She didn't want to delete the post. She knew someone out there might read it and feel seen. But she didn't want to keep explaining herself either. Not to people who already decided who she was.
That morning, as Logan dropped off their kids at daycare and took the dogs to the sitter, Heather stood by the door and told him they needed to talk. His silence had gone on long enough. She'd given him space, respected his distance, but she couldn't live like this anymore. Either they tried to fix what was broken, or they stopped pretending and set each other free. He looked at her, tired and quiet, and asked if they could meet at lunch instead. They were both running late for work. She nodded. She didn't expect much, but maybe, just maybe, there was something still worth salvaging. That small flicker of hope, it hurt worse than anything else. Over lunch at a small, quiet diner near downtown Asheville, Logan finally apologized. He stared at his coffee for what felt like forever before saying, "I can't believe I went through with it. I don't know what I was thinking." He admitted that the prank, the entire setup with the fake affair, was supposed to be harmless and playful, that it was a stupid joke. But the words didn't soften anything. He said he'd been feeling miserable ever since, guilty, empty. "I've never felt so worthless in my entire life," he told her, voice barely above a whisper. Then he said something that made Heather's stomach sink deeper than it already had. "You showed me how disposable I am to you," he murmured. "How quickly you believed something that horrible about me, and how easily you started planning to move on. Within hours." Heather blinked, stunned. Logan went on, telling her that even if he had cheated, he would have wanted her to fight, to scream, to ask questions. "If the roles were reversed, I would have wanted to know who the guy was. I'd want to know why, what he had that I didn't." She sat in silence for a while, then quietly told him the truth. She had thought all those things, wondered about the other woman, questioned why it happened, felt a cold, burning pain in her chest that wouldn't go away. But she didn't act on it, not because she didn't care, but because something bigger had taken hold. "I had to think about the kids," Heather said softly. "Their world, their security. If we were headed for divorce, I needed to figure out how to do that in the least damaging way possible. You've always known I wouldn't stay with someone who cheated, but I couldn't fall apart in front of them, not yet." She told him how she pushed away the rage, the heartbreak, the chaos inside her, because she knew she'd have time to fall apart later, but not in front of their children, not while the world they knew was still intact, even if only for one more day. Logan said he wanted to move out, go stay with his parents, but he didn't know how to deal with the idea of not seeing the children every day. So Heather offered a plan. He could pick them up from daycare after work. She usually finished later anyway, and she could get them from his parents' house in the evenings. Weekends, she suggested, could be split between them. He said nothing for a moment, just stared at her. Then quietly he said, "I love you." He kissed her forehead and wrapped his arms around her, holding her longer than he had in weeks. It felt like a small piece of what they used to be. But when Heather got home after picking up the kids and the dogs, he was already gone. His clothes, his shoes, his toothbrush, gone. A message came in around 11 p.m. "I can't believe you're doing it again," it read. "I'm done." Confused, she called him. Logan's voice was cold this time, distant. He said, "You didn't care. You were calm, matter of fact, like it didn't mean anything to you that I left. Like I was just irrelevant." Her hands trembled. She told him that was so unfair, that she'd missed him every day he shut her out, that she only gave him space because he asked for it, because she was trying to respect him and give their marriage room to breathe. But he didn't want to hear it. He said this wasn't working, that he wanted a divorce. At 2 a.m., after their call ended in silence, she sent back one word, "Okay." Later, in a final update, Heather thanked those who had shown kindness and support. She admitted she had been lost in her own pain, her thoughts looping endlessly, questioning herself. For a while, she even began to doubt her sanity, doubt her strength. But she never lost her truth. When Logan found her Reddit post, something shifted. He told her he was ashamed. Ashamed of the way he had handled everything. The prank, the silence, the blame. The guilt finally caught up with him when he read the raw truth from her side, through the words of someone who had loved him deeply and had been devastated by his carelessness. They're not back together, not yet, but they've been talking, going on small dates, trying. Before all of this, They had been discussing the idea of another baby, maybe moving to a bigger home. They were starting to build their forever. Now, Heather told him she still wanted that someday, but not now. Not while everything still hurts this much. She wasn't rejecting the future. She was just trying to make sure there would be one. Logan said he understood. He seemed almost relieved. Heather still loves him, misses him. So do their children. But healing takes time, and this time, she's not rushing it. Not again. The house felt quieter than usual. Too quiet, really. Heather sat on the edge of her bed that night, watching her kids sleep on the baby monitor, wondering if they felt the tension too, wondering if they missed their father the same way she did. The days were heavy. She went to work, cooked dinner, handled daycare pickups, walked the dogs. But beneath it all, she carried a constant ache, one that even silence couldn't soothe. In her final message to the online community that had followed her story, Heather opened up once again, hesitantly. She knew not everyone would understand, especially those who had strong opinions about her choices, but she felt obligated to give an update, not just for herself, but for the strangers who had offered her empathy in her darkest moments. Some commenters were confused. One asked, "Wait, didn't he do the same thing again? Move out and then get mad when you didn't beg him to stay?" That stung more than it should have, because it was true. Heather replied, "Apparently being calm isn't a good quality anymore. I got a lot of backlash from Logan for not reacting the way he needed, and I know I'll probably get the same kind of backlash here too, but I just needed to share. So many of you were kind to me, you worried about me, and for that, I'm grateful. I'm sorry if what I've chosen is disappointing, but I want you to know I'm okay." Then came the warnings. Another comment read, "You realize he's probably going to keep doing this, right? Insecure people like him create drama to see if you'll chase them, and now that he knows you will, he won't stop. It'll just escalate." Heather didn't brush that off. She had thought the same thing, that maybe this pattern of hurt and withdrawal and testing wasn't going to stop, that maybe this wasn't about a single mistake, but something deeper, a need inside him that she couldn't fill. She answered honestly, "I've talked to him about it. That's what I fear the most too. I don't have any promises that it won't happen again, but he says he's willing to work on himself, and I'm trying to stay alert. If he's serious, maybe we can get through this. If not, then I'll walk away. For real." There were other voices in the thread, gentler ones. One person wrote, "He seems to know he messed up. That's a start. He almost destroyed your marriage, and if he's truly remorseful, that matters. But you're not stupid for believing in him. Just don't give him your heart again without proof he's protecting it this time." Heather nodded slowly as she read it. That felt closer to her reality than most takes did. She wasn't being naive. She wasn't clinging blindly to hope. She loved him, yes, but not enough to let him break her again, not without change.
She wrote another reply. "Logan knows he's the one who caused all this damage. He's told me over and over that he's sorry, and I believe that part. But believing him doesn't mean I'm giving him a free pass. I'm not forgiving him just because I miss him. He has to earn that. I love him. I know he loves me, but love alone won't fix what he broke. We have our children to think about too. That's what makes it so complicated." A few others had suggested something Heather hadn't thought much about before. Maybe Logan seeing her written words had helped him finally understand that reading her pain, instead of watching her swallow it in person, had shattered his illusion that she didn't care. Maybe they were right. Maybe he needed to see her heartbreak spelled out, in her own voice, raw and real. Maybe that's why he said he was ashamed when he found the post. Maybe that's why he finally agreed to talk. Heather still didn't have answers, not all of them.
Logan hadn't gone back home, and they weren't fixed, but they were talking again, going on walks, sharing dinner, laughing a little. Not like before, but like two people trying. They had once talked about having another baby, about moving to a bigger house with a fenced yard for the dogs. Those conversations had stopped. Now, when Logan gently brought it up again, Heather told him she wasn't ready, not yet. She didn't want him to mistake caution for coldness. "I just want to wait," she told him. "Not cancel, just wait." To her surprise, he understood. And for the first time in weeks, that gave her something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Before everything fell apart between Heather and Logan, they had attended their younger sister Madeline's wedding, a grand, lavish event held just outside Asheville at an estate Heather had never even heard of until the invitation arrived. It was the kind of wedding that looked perfect on paper, expensive, colorful, and orchestrated to the last minute. But to Heather, it felt more like a stage performance than a celebration of love. She remembered sitting next to Logan beneath a string of fairy lights, watching nearly 250 guests flood the reception space. Adults, children, distant relatives, college friends her sister hadn't seen in years. The sound of kids shrieking, clinking glasses, and overly loud music clashed with the words Madeline had once used: intimate, romantic, simple. It wasn't any of those things. It was chaos. Heather had always believed that weddings should be personal, quiet. When she and Logan got married 3 years earlier, it had been in a cozy garden with only their closest friends and family. 25 people total. No DJ, no photo booth, no dramatic speeches. Just them. Just love. Madeline's wedding was the opposite. Heather tried to be supportive throughout the months of planning, but it had been impossible not to notice how the stress had aged her sister. The phone calls about napkin colors, the breakdowns over seating charts, the budget that ballooned and stretched their parents' savings well past comfort. At the reception, Madeline ended up in tears. Somewhere between the first dance and the toast from their uncle who had too much whiskey, she disappeared into the bridal suite. Heather was pulled in to help calm her down. She found her sister curled up on a velvet chair, makeup smudged, dress bunched up at the knees. Heather handed her a glass of water and sat down beside her. They sat in silence for a moment before Heather, drained and tired, asked the question that she'd been biting back all night. Was it worth it? Madeline looked at her in disbelief. All the planning, Heather said quietly, the stress, the money, the expectations, was it worth this feeling right now? It came out softer than she expected. Not cruel, just honest. But it landed like a stone in water. Later that night, their mother confronted her, said her attitude had been horrible all day, that she and Logan had made comments that were inappropriate and smug, that asking Madeline such a question was uncalled for and heartless. Since then, neither her mother nor her sister had spoken to her. She wondered if they'd ever truly understood her intent. Maybe it wasn't the best time. Maybe she should have waited. But the question hadn't come from a place of judgment. It had come from seeing someone she loved break down after chasing perfection that never existed. When someone online asked what she had actually said, Heather explained the comment and added context. During the planning, she and Logan had gently tried to help Madeline manage her expectations, not to ruin anything, just to prepare her. They reminded her that no day could ever go exactly as planned, that weddings, like life, had unpredictable variables. But Madeline didn't want to hear it. Heather admitted they had asked their mother early on if she was prepared for the emotional fallout. She got yelled at for that too. The question she asked Madeline at the end of the night wasn't a jab, it was exhaustion, a moment of vulnerability between sisters, fueled a little by wine, yes, but mostly by concern. People online didn't see it that way. The harshest replies cut deep. Strangers said she sounded arrogant, that she was bitter because her own wedding was small, that she used her sister's breakdown as an opportunity to be right. "She can have as many guests as she wants," one commenter said. "You didn't have to stay, you could have left quietly, but instead you rubbed salt in her wound." Another said, "Making your sister feel like a failure on her wedding day just to prove your point makes you the a-hole, plain and simple." Heather didn't reply again after that. She sat in the dark, the glow of the screen fading into the quiet of her living room, and thought about how easy it was for people to misunderstand each other, how intentions get twisted, how sometimes pain speaks in the wrong language and lands where it shouldn't. She wasn't trying to win anything that night. She just didn't know how to keep watching people she loved hurt themselves chasing things that don't matter. But maybe she had said too much, and maybe it didn't matter anymore. Some of the harshest words Heather ever read weren't from her family, but from strangers online. One person wrote, "Just because you wanted a small, quiet wedding doesn't mean your sister did. You might get overwhelmed by crowds, but not everyone does. A 200-person wedding isn't extravagant to everyone. And seriously, how did you think asking her if it was worth it would make her feel better? Were you trying to comfort her or just make yourself feel superior?" Another added, "You're not special because you had a garden ceremony with 25 people. All day you pointed out what was wrong with your sister's wedding and patted yourself on the back like you got it right. Then when she broke down, you took the opportunity to say, 'Told you so.' That's not love, that's cruelty." The comments didn't stop. Some called her bitter. Others said she was jealous. Her mother hadn't spoken to her since, and her sister hadn't returned a single message. Heather didn't know if she was the villain in their story now. Maybe she had said the wrong thing at the worst moment. Maybe pain had a way of making people selfish. All she knew was that she missed them, and that silence hurts worse than yelling ever could. She never meant to be right. She just wanted her sister to be happy, to not feel like she'd spent a fortune chasing something that left her in tears. But maybe some wounds can't be fixed with honesty. It's easy to say the wrong thing when emotions are high, even when your heart's in the right place. Heather's story is a reminder that timing, tone, and empathy matter just as much as truth. In real-life relationships, especially with family, our words can wound in ways we don't intend. If you find yourself frustrated by someone's choices, ask yourself, are you speaking to help or to be heard? If someone is hurting, sometimes the best comfort isn't a hard truth, it's presence, a hug, a quiet, "I'm here." There's a time for honesty, but there's also a time for gentleness. Conflict with family can feel especially brutal. If you've spoken out of turn, own it, but also give space. Healing takes time, and so does understanding. If you're on the other side, if you've been hurt by someone's words, remember that missteps don't always come from malice. Sometimes they come from love that stumbled. And above all, in moments of celebration or collapse, what people need most is kindness.